Zaldrizes Buzdaris Gosdau.
Welcome to Sir Hunt's Reviews. This video, I'm going to be talking about in-game theories. 3 different ones. I've mentioned them a bunch in my videos, or in my live streams rather. I sort of formulate them on the spot, right? All my live streams are unscripted. I just, study the books the week leading up to them, right? So this is a video that focuses on some of the ones that I've created in those many live streams. Please do me a massive favor. I always ask you to slap a like on it. Please do that. The like goes for $20. But also, consider checking out my Patreon. If you have $2 and you really like my stuff, you can join and you'll gain immediate access to a bunch of episodes, videos, things that'll never be uploaded here to YouTube for the most part. And it's just my way of, sort of separating from being, only solely relying on YouTube's ad revenue. That's not, it's not reliable at all. So Patreon is just my way to circumvent that. Consider checking out. It's linked down below in the description. There's a bunch of people over there, and we do weekly polls. They get first dibs on live stream questions and all that stuff. Once again, that's linked down below in the description. And if you can't do that, thank you for watching. Now, the first in-game theory that I think is really worth mentioning for this video is the Faceless Men. All right, so there are several different elemental deities in A Song of Ice and Fire, and for the most part, they all have representatives, right? So you have dragons representing literally fire, anybody who can control or bargain with those dragons, rather, just Targaryens, Valyrians, right? They are representatives of the fire deity. And then you have White Walkers, in particular Starks, who tend to be the deities for the ice god. Breanne, right now, is training to become a deity for the many-faced ice god of the north. One thing you got to understand, the most important thing about the northern religions is that they did the same thing the Valyrians did, blood sacrifice. So the children of the Force intermingled with the First Men, but the First Men would get the gods on their side, and they would sacrifice to the gods by doing so with the blood magic. So they would place pieces of bodies, right? So like a heart of a traitor. Not a traitor, that's a bad example. Someone who broke their laws, right? They would willingly sacrifice them to these tree gods. And a lot of the times, those faces that are carved on them will have bloody body parts in them. Like, for instance, when Jon's north of the wall ranging, right? He stumbles across one of the biggest weirwood trees he ever seen, and he reaches in, and there's fucking ashes and bones in there, right? So that's really interesting. But that's besides the point, right? The actual theory, the actual in-game theory that I want to discuss involves the Faceless Men, right? So the Faceless Men, the first Faceless Man was a Valyrian who may or may not have been a dragon rider. You got to understand, Valyrians got their wealth, their power, their dragons by having slaves. Every territory, every town, city, anybody near them would eventually get trampled up in their dragon flaming wheel, right? Meaning that they would expand. One of the ways that they would become powerful is by mining gold. They would have slaves working in these they're not just regular gold mines. They're like gold mines that are also attached to volcanic activity. So in these mines, they wouldn't let slaves just die. They would have to work until death, right? So because of that, the first Faceless Man was born. The first Faceless Man was this guy who would just walk around in the caves of the Valyrian freehold and give the gift of death to all the slaves. So right now, Arya is the deity of death, right? She's down in Bravos. She's training with the Faceless Men, right? And she's going to become the representative of the god of death, right? So Bran's the ice god. Jon Snow could be ice and fire deity. Daenerys is fire deity. But ultimately, the Faceless Men will be tied into the end of this story. Let me give you a couple examples. Aside from Arya literally becoming a Faceless Man right now in A Dance of Dragons, and then obviously Winds of Winter and then A Dream of Spring. Also, there's a Faceless Man who killed this dude named Pate that is currently in the Citadel with Samwell. He's literally, the Faceless Man, basically tricked this dude Pate, who was this novice, this acolyte who was training to become a Faceless Man, but it's never really good enough. He's this homeless dude who just, he's in the Citadel, or he was, around that area, and he joined the city. Anyway, a Faceless Man tricks him. Right? A Faceless Man says, I will give you a gold dragon if you can give me this key to this old maester who is basically senile, but he used to be in charge of a lot of things. He has this master key that can open any door in the Citadel. So a Faceless Man trades a gold coin for it, but then ultimately, Pate gives his life up for it. So the Faceless Men poisons him, right? The coin has poison on it. So basically they arrange this meeting. Pate's whole goal is to just, obviously before he's killed, is to get the gold coin, go get with this girl that he really wants to get with. So Faceless Men works a deal with him. They say, hey, give me that master key that opens any door in the Citadel. I'll give you this gold coin. You can go buy the girl you want, right? So they do that. The coin's poisoned. Pate falls to the ground, and the next time we see him is when Sam arrives at the Citadel in his very last chapter in A Feast for Crows, right? In Sam's last POV, he gets there, he meets this dude, Maester Warwin, and then ultimately Pate. So the Faceless Men want that key for some reason in the Citadel. A lot of people think there's forbidden knowledge. There for sure is forbidden knowledge in the Citadel, and that key will open it. There's potentially even a dragon egg at the Citadel. Now, I'll discuss that for a later video. So the Faceless Men are currently at the Citadel, and the Citadel in Old Town in particular is about to be attacked by Euron, right? So, in my opinion, the Faceless Men will work through Arya as the god of death, and in Winds of Winter or in A Dream of Spring, Arya will just be going around giving death to not just the people on her list, but every single person who owes the many-faced god death, right? So there's a lot of characters who escape death, narrowly escape death. Eventually, and this is crazy, this is the actual heart of the theory, Arya will have to kill Jon Snow. Jon Snow owes the many-faced god of death, right? I say many-faced god of death, many-faced gods of the north, ice and death, ice preserves. That's probably linked. I'll talk about that for another video. But ultimately, Arya may be tasked with killing Jon Snow because Jon Snow's brought back to life. And the many-faced god always gets his dues. Death. If you like my dope-ass t-shirt here, no coat, just cola, right? It's actually a UK clothing company called Baked Ape. Has some fans over there that sent me that to the P.O. box. This is a really dope shirt. No coke, just buds, yeah? This is kind of just to add, sorry about that. Hold this mic, certainly. This is just to sort of add levity, or clarity, rather, to a theory that everybody loves to bring up, and that is Azor Ahai, the prince who was promised. The Long Night, right? There's this hero from the ages of hero who literally has this flaming sword, and he defeated the Night King, or the Long Night, the first one in Westeros, and also in Essos, all over the world, right? A lot of them have the same theory. Harkoon, the hero, Infantar, right? All these different heroic figures are probably the same figure, who had a flaming sword and used that sword, Lightbringer, to bring back light into the world, because there was a terrible darkness. Children, during the original Long Night, children were born, died, lived, all in darkness, right? So this dude, Lightbringer, this hero of ages, literally defeated the Long Night. So what does that mean, right? Because obviously that's Legendarium, not Tolkien Legendarium, but that's clearly a tall tale that the citizens of Westeros and the citizens of Essos and anybody that has that legend, it's not exactly what they say, right? So Lightbringer, and this is one of the theories that I came up with literally live. Check the link down below. You can go watch my most recent live stream and see exactly what I'm talking about. It's called The Blacks, where I focused on. It was actually on New Year's Eve. It was really fun. I focused on everything in Song of Ice and Fire surrounding the Blacks and all that stuff. But so the theory is my theory, right? Lightbringer is not per se, or Azor Ahai rather, is not like a legend like that you need to go by, right? It's a recipe for dragon steel, right? So Nissa, right? Or Azor Ahai, rather. The legend goes that he tried to forge this mythical sword Lightbringer 3 different times, and on the 3rd and final time, he actually did it, right? So the first time, he labors for like 40 days, 40 nights, tries to quench the sword, and it doesn't work, it shatters. Then he goes and gets a lion's heart, works on the sword even longer, then tries to quench the sword in a lion's heart, and it still shatters. Then ultimately, the 3rd and final time, he labors for a ridiculous amount of time. I think it's like 1,000 days, 1,000 nights. That's besides the point. He works the longest on this 3rd sword, and then he plunges it into the heart of his woman, Nissa, his true love, and then his sword is ignited in fiery flame. So what does that mean? Dragon steel. Like, the Valyrians were trying to recreate this mythical steel that, the Dragon Lords before them that taught them all their stuff had, right? And in that process, the Valyrian steel was founded. The 3rd and final time, he used dragon fire, right, to heat up the steel to a certain point, and instead of quenching it in, typical things like some people use oil, you could use water. He used the blood of his loved ones. So he knew that, Valyrian steel has to have magical properties to it. Blood magic equals magical abilities. For the most part, they know if you give something massive, you'll get something in return. It may be the smallest thing. It may be something you don't want. But ultimately, it's an equivalent law of exchange in the sense that not quite like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, right? So we know how that works. But it is very similar. So that's what they did. Azor High, Lightbringer, all that. It's just a recipe for Valyrian steel and how to make it again. So ultimately, the person who makes Valyrian steel plentiful in the world again, or the person who makes, comes up, thinks of that recipe, that's ultimately Azor High. The person who allowed everybody, for the most part, to have a sword of Valyrian steel to fight the White Walkers, the ice, right? So fire versus ice. It's a song of ice and fire. You have to have it in balance, or things like White Walkers come south of the wall, or the dragons take over everything and burn all of it to the ground. You have to have a balance. The reason why the White Walkers are coming back is because the dragons are back. They're there to nullify the dragons. Now, the third and final theory that I want to discuss is Dance of Dragons 2.0. I'm not going to spend that much time on this. Pretty self-explanatory. Daenerys has 3 dragons. She can only ride one. So she's going to have to find 2 husbands to ride those other 2 dragons, but that's not going to work out how she thinks it is. I think ultimately one of the dragons will be stolen from Daenerys and will be used to fight her on the back of Drogon. So Daenerys will be on Drogon and Fagon, right? So her nephew, I think he's actual Aegon. I've talked about him a bunch in recent videos, but basically he's this character that pops up in a dance, and George tells us that he's actually Rhaegar's legitimate son who was spirited away before the sack of King's Landing. So this character is now 15, a little bit older than Jon Snow, 16, right? He's just landed in Westeros, and ultimately his goal was to go over to Westeros, establish himself, and then be like, hey, my aunt, be my wife. I have something to offer you. I have this massive army. I've conquered most of the kingdoms. Let me hold a dragon, right? That's not going to work in his favor. He's going to have to then claim a dragon, steal it, and the 2 of them will fight in what's known as the Dance of Dragons 2.0. Daenerys makes it very clear in her final, the most recent chapters in the Dance of Dragons, that someone's going to have to marry her and mount these other dragons. Like, she specifically mentions that there's only one dragon that she bonded with, Drogon. She bonded with all 3 of the dragons, but she's only rode one of them. And for all of Targaryen history, right, debate me down below in the comment section, there's always only been one rider per dragon in that lifetime. So the dragon can have multiple riders, only one at a time. So when a rider dies, or if the dragon dies, that rider gets no more dragons. But the dragon can get more riders. I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you want more content like this, please consider checking out my Patreon. You can join for just $2, and you'll immediately gain access to a full 24 hours worth of content that's exclusive to there. Now, I have, and I will, occasionally upload Patreon exclusives here to YouTube, but for the most part, that won't be happening because those videos are unfiltered, right? So I say whatever the heck I want to, and YouTube's algorithm doesn't allow me to do that here. So for the most part, they're going to be staying on Patreon, but eventually, when I sort through them, if YouTube lets certain episodes be uploaded, like most recently the Battle in the Gullet that I did, talking about all kinds of stuff for Season 2 House of the Dragon, eventually, some of that content may be available here, but it's available right away if you join for just $2. If you can't do any of that, thank you so much for watching. Please slap a like on this video. Like goes going to be 420, and then also turn the notifications all the way on, not to an 11. So that way, you'll get an alert every single time I drop a video throughout the wait for House of the Dragon Season 2, where it's on this channel. Thank you for watching.